What's going on YouTube? Counting Games back here again. So before you guys click on this video and say, Chris, you're weird and stuff for reacting to this, one of my loyal subscribers asked me to react to this. Now, I don't know if they're trying to push this kind of content on YouTube, what's trying to go on, or is there some kind of conspiracy conspiring? But we're going to react to it anyway, because I found this interesting, guys, and this isn't the take that you guys think I'm going to give on it. I'm pretty much, yeah, I'll give you guys my opinion on this shit. Because I've actually researched this quite a bit. Obviously, I'm not a black person, I'm not an American, a black American or anything like that. But yeah, I'm gonna give what I think about this. Now, definitely, guys, slavery was horrendous. So if they're trying to downplay slavery in any way, that's not. It's just ridiculous, guys. It was like the worst thing ever. Mainly for black Americans. But yeah, let's just get straight into it, guys. This excerpt is taken from the book Black Rednecks and White Liberals. So let's get it. Untold Facts. Oh, I didn't even name the thing. So this is by Thomas Sowell. Untold Facts About Slavery. So this is actually a black guy that wrote this. I'm pretty sure Thomas Sowell is a black gentleman. So let's get it.
The instrumental use of the history of slavery today also underlies the claim that slavery grew out of racism. For most of its long history, which includes most of the history of the human race, slavery was largely not the enslavement of racially different people.
So let me just pause right there, guys. The first opening line is not about racism. Guys, let's just reiterate what I said in the beginning. Slavery in any form, I didn't actually say this, slavery in any form is bad, guys. No matter if it's racist, it just makes it worse. Guys, it's just bad. Trying to justify slavery is a horrendous thing, guys. They shouldn't even have had it in the first place. It's not a thing that we should be justifying in any way, guys. And that's what I think this excerpt is trying to do. So that's my opinion on it, guys. Don't come at me.
For the simple reason that only in recent centuries has either the technology or the wealth existed to go to another continent to get slaves and transport them en masse across an ocean. People were enslaved because they were vulnerable, not because of how they looked.
Vulnerable is a key word there, guys. Protect yourself at all times. As a society, man, you should be able to defend yourself. As a person, you should be able to defend yourself. As a society, you should be able to defend yourself from attackers, which a lot of places don't do.
Peoples of the Balkans were enslaved by fellow Europeans, as well as by the peoples of the Middle East, for at least 6 centuries before the first African was brought to the Western Hemisphere.
Yeah, then, guys, let me reiterate, slavery is not good in any form. Should have never existed, guys. Should have never happened. Trying to justify it, this is why this is kind of logically inconsistent, guys, and this is why you need philosophy 101 training, or just read any philosophy books that I got up there. In any form, it's bad, guys. Doesn't matter if because it happened in the Western Hemisphere, because it happened in here, wherever it happened, it's still a heinous, evil act.
Before the modern era, by and large, Europeans enslaved other Europeans.
Still not good. Still horrendous. Evil. Don't try and justify the American slavery, black slaves, just because we were slave too. I'm saying me too, guys, because, I wish I wasn't. I would have been richer, born richer, but, I probably was, so.
Asians enslaved other Asians. Africans enslaved other Africans.
Still not a good way to justify, black slavery in America.
And the indigenous peoples of the Western Hemisphere enslaved other indigenous peoples of the Western Hemisphere.
Still not good.
Slavery was not based on race, much less on theories about race.
Doesn't really change much, guys. It's still a bad thing. It's still a heinous, evil act, right?
Only relatively late in history did enslavement across racial lines occur on such a scale as to promote an ideology of racism that outlasted the institution of slavery itself. Wherever a separate people were enslaved, they were disdained or despised, whether they were different by country, religion, caste, race, or tribe. In East Africa, the Maasai
basically saying that fuck everyone, everyone's a piece of shit, basically. That's what I'm getting from this, guys. Everyone enslaved everyone. It was just horrendous. But they're trying to basically explain that black people in America shouldn't get preferential treatment when it comes to slavery. But that's still not true, guys. Their slavery was really horrendous too. They were raped and pillaged. I read a lot of books on this. A lot of people think that white Irish slaves were the same as black slaves. They weren't, guys. Read a history book. Any history book will tell you this. There are 3 PhD professors, white guys, in New York, and they basically explain how that's a thing used by racist people. That's a ploy used by racist people in America to basically undermine racism that happened there, saying, oh, Irish people were treated just as bad. Guys, we were treated shit by the British, right, for like 800 years, all this kind of stuff. Persecution, horrendous, right? But some of the things weren't happening to us. We weren't raped. We weren't, genetically like modified just so the biggest, strongest people, were created or whatever. There weren't a lot of these things. Like the women weren't like completely raped, stuff like that. There wasn't like a lot of these things that happened over there. There wasn't like public hangings. They did sometimes happen, but that was because we would mainly like cause ruckus too. Like, so it's not just, you can categorically say it's not as bad, guys. We were also most this keyword here. Most of our slaves that went to America, they bought themselves into slavery so they could have a better life. Okay, so slavery was a thing at the time, like being a maid or whatever. Like for a person, I'll come over and I'll work in your factory, but after 5 years I'm a free man. That was never an option for black people. Black people were not allowed to buy themselves out of slavery, for the most part, right? That's, again, the keyword most there, because I know all you guys can come in the comments, oh, Chris, but like, some did. Yeah, most didn't, guys. Like, literally, like 90+% didn't, so don't compare the two.
Or feared slave raiders and other African tribes, either alone or in conjunction with Arabs, enslaved their more vulnerable neighbors. As late as 1891, it was reported that Manyuema slavers had demoralized surrounding tribes, destroying crops, and famine reigned everywhere. Even in the early 20th century, Abyssinians were still raiding other Africans and carrying off slaves. It was 1922 before...
It was still not good, guys. It's still not a good way to justify what's happening. You know what I mean? Slavery is bad in every aspect. Murder is bad. You can't just say, oh, well, because, murder was happening in this part of the world, it's, not to get preferential treatment for murder in this part of the world. Logically consistent, guys. It's not the case. It's bad no matter what.
For the British had gained sufficient control in Tanganyika to stamp out slavery there. Arabs were the leading slave raiders in East Africa, ranging over an area larger than all of Europe.
Okay.
The total number...
So Arabs, we realized Arabs also had a massive amount of slaves. So, yeah. So, new thing we've learned today, guys. Muslim people, Arabic people had massive amounts of slaves as well. More than the amount of people in Europe, which is crazy. I didn't know that.
The number of slaves exported from East Africa during the 19th century has been estimated to be at least 2 million.
Jeez.
The form in which the story of slavery has reached most people today has been along the lines of the best-selling book and widely watched television miniseries Roots by Alex Haley.
Oh, yeah, Roots, yeah.
Challenged on the historical accuracy of Roots, Haley said, "I tried to give my people a myth to live by. This instrumental use of history, or purported history, is open to the same objections as other instrumental myth-making."
We begin today.
That was pretty bad. Oh, here we have an ad for Ben Shapiro, another kind of nutcase, we should say. But he's not nutcase in so much as just conservative. I don't really like conservative shit. It's just stupid. I don't like left liberal shit either, guys. So don't put me in with anything. But yeah, myth making, okay.
Despite the impression created by Roots, during the era of the massive slave trade from West Africa, a white man was more likely to catch malaria in Africa than to catch slaves himself. The average life expectancy of a white man in the interior of sub-Saharan Africa at that time was less than 1 year. By and large, men from Europe or the Western Hemisphere came to the coasts of Africa, bought their slaves, and left as soon as possible.
Oh, okay.
Even so, the death rates among the white crews of the ships carrying slaves to the Western Hemisphere were as high as the death rates among the slaves themselves.
That should have just told you right off the bat, you shouldn't be getting slaves. If the people going to these places, West Africa and stuff, to get slaves and stuff, were dying at an exponential rate, dying at a rate that's as high as the slaves themselves, why the fuck would you continue to carry slaves? Like, absolute evil bastards, man. This is just not in any way good. This is all bad.
It was only much later, after quinine and other medical measures enabled Europeans to survive where there were tropical diseases, was it possible for them to invade Africa in force and establish empires there. But by then, the Atlantic slave trade had already been ended. During the era of that trade, Africa was largely ruled by Africans, who established the conditions under which slave sales took place. The crew of a slave...
So we know that, like, Africans, they enslaved their own people as well. Like, guys, everyone will say that it was horrendous, but like I said, it still doesn't take away from the fact that what they did was wrong, guys. You know, just accept it. You know what I mean? It's not good.
Slave ship was in no position to defy African rulers and their armies by going out across the land and capturing people willy-nilly. The stronger African peoples captured and enslaved the weaker peoples. The same pattern found over the centuries in Europe, Asia, the Western Hemisphere.
So basically, here's a little philosophy lesson for us all. Might equals right. So whoever's stronger, whoever has the strongest army, whoever has, you know what I mean, the strongest person you can beat the shit out of people is right. Is that what you guys want? Yeah, no. Because if someone's 250 pounds, you know, a professional UFC fighter, that means he's the bully of the town until someone comes along with a M9, you know what I mean, you know, Beretta, and shoots him in the fucking head and kills him. So, no, guys, might does not equal right.
Hemisphere and Polynesia. In Nyasaland, the Ngoni and Yao swaggered over and terrorized other tribes. In Uganda, the Baganda made life miserable for their neighbors. And the Nyoro and Hima of Anko enslaved Toro women and children. The Tutsi dominated the Hutu in Rwanda. The Maasai lorded it over the Kikuyu and Kamba.
Maasai.
And the latter, in turn, held the Indorobo.
The Maasai are cruel. They're a cruel tribe. They eat like just meat, like it's class. They're like so strong and shit. They just eat meat, and they're like all like 6'4", 250. They're beasts, you know.
In a kind of serfdom. It was precisely the fact that Europeans, except for the Portuguese, seldom participated in the raids that captured and enslaved Africans that enabled most people in Europe and the Americas to remain oblivious to the traumatic experience that this was, with some Africans committing suicide to avoid capture and wives being whipped as they tried to cling to their husbands or children.
Damn, that's messed
Historian
up,
David Breon Davis pointed out that Europeans had little contact with the actual process of enslavement, and that, as late as 1721, the Royal African Company asked its agents to investigate the modes of enslavement in the interior.
Jesus.
Europeans typically saw only the end results. Enslaved people...
Well, like, okay, so, guys, it's like that veganism argument, you know, whether you're killing the animal and then you're killing like an animal and then, oh, well, I'm only paying for the butcher to give it to me. Guys, you're still paying for the horrendous act to happen. If you pay for a hitman to kill somebody, to kill your neighbor, it's wrong, guys. You go to jail for that. Like, that is, you actually are just as wrong as the person who committed the murder. In law, guys, that is the case, right? So they're just as wrong as the people that are committing these heinous acts. They're actually funding it. They're paying for it. So it's just as bad, guys. Some cases, actually, some people would say it's worse. So
being offered for sale on the coast. It was much the same story in the Ottoman Empire, where those who bought slaves had no idea what these slaves had been through before.
I mean,
the unique position of the Western world in the history, and especially the destruction of slavery, need not imply that there was unanimity within the West on this institution. In addition to whites who defended the enslavement of Africans on racial grounds, or who opposed general emancipation on social grounds, there were many whites, and even blacks, who defended slavery as a matter of self-interest as slave owners. Although most black...
That's just to protect money, guys. Right? Like, that's to protect their money. Like, they...
owners of slaves in the United States were only nominal owners of members of their own families. There were thousands of other blacks in the antebellum South who were commercial slave owners.
So there were black slaves. Yeah, everyone, guys, he's basically just trying to downplay the treatment that black people got in America. You know, it's still not good, guys. It's still horrendous, man. You know, whether black people owned it as well, it's whether black people owned other black slaves or white people owned other white slaves, it's still not good, guys. Still horrendous.
Just like their white counterparts. An estimated 1/3 of the free persons of color in New Orleans were slave owners, and thousands of these slave owners volunteered to fight for the Confederacy during the Civil War. Black slave owners were even more common in the Caribbean. In short, there were many defenders of slavery in the West, even in the 19th century. And outside the West, slavery was too widely accepted to require defense. No other nation ended slavery in the same way as the United States did, and few ended it after so short a struggle, as history is measured. How and
basically trying to say that America, they did good with slavery. They weren't bad at all with their slavery, but like comparing to who, guys? Like this is the Western world we're talking about. Like compared to who? Like Egypt, like or something like or. Asia, like they just would kill people. They wouldn't even have slaves. They just kill people. If you acting up, dead.
Why did slavery end in most of the world? There were two major processes. Over the centuries, as more and more territories around the world consolidated into nation-states with their own armies and navies, raiding those territories to capture and enslave the people who lived within them became more hazardous in itself, and also risked military retaliation against the countries from which the raiders came.
Damn.
Thus, more and more peoples became off-limits to slave raiders over time. Put differently, the areas which remained subject to slave raiding over the centuries were primarily those where the people lived in smaller or weaker societies. Okay. Such societies continued to exist where it was difficult, for geographic or other reasons, to consolidate large areas under one government. This was true of the Balkans, the backwaters of Asia, and much of sub-Saharan Africa. By the early modern era, sub-Saharan Africa, with its numerous and severe geographic handicaps, was one of the last remaining areas from which vast numbers of people could be enslaved.
That's crazy. So basically you're saying like North Africa was like one of the last places that was enslaved. So absolutely crazy, guys. One of my loyal subscribers asked me to react to that. I might do a follow-up to that, but yeah, kind of brutal, guys. Yeah, so hope you guys enjoyed that, man. Irish couple reacts to facts about slavery. My friends on Unstable TV. Hope you guys enjoyed that, man. Love you guys all. I'll see you guys in the next one, man. Peace.